So Hannah, tell us some more of those tips and tricks and things that you share with your mentees to really speak up for themselves and advocate without feeling like they're bragging.
Yes, and I was hoping that you would use that word,
Bragging.
bragging.
Yeah.
I I was counting on you, and you delivered.
Woohoo!
I think, bragging is such a ick word for me, and I'll tell you why,
Mhm.
because I think there are many ways to brag, humble brag, self-advocate, self-market that aren't the egotistical, narcissistic, "I'm so great, here's all these things I've done."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I like to, especially with my mentees, again, back to them, I like to frame it as sharing context. So
I love
again, no one knows like what value you're bringing if you're not sharing context.
Hi there, and welcome to the HR podcast. This is Linda Misagatas.
and Cindy Manuel, and we'll be your co-hosts. After spending years working in and with HR, we thought, why not start a podcast to support the important HR community? We believe the way things have always been done isn't necessarily what's going to work in the future. So we're diving into topics that support HR and working women as they navigate the future of work. We're talking about professional growth and also how we can support each other as human beings.
We can't wait to bring you insights from HR experts, thought leaders, and inspiring women who are making a real difference in their organization and communities. They'll share their journeys and tips on balancing work and life in a better way. We're excited to learn alongside you and hope you'll pick up some great takeaways from tips and tricks to worksheets that you can actually use in your daily life. So grab your favorite beverage
Or lace up your walking shoes and join us for the HR Her Resources podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Her Resources podcast. I'm here with my incredible co-host, Cindy Manuel. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm very excited today. Hannah and I have known each other for many, many years, and I've watched her career from an intern till now. And so I'm super excited that she's here to talk with us today, Linda.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I always love it when we get amazing guests in the studio with us. And I have to tell you something. It was fun. I actually was talking to someone the other day who I'd never met before, who told me they listened to the Her Resources podcast and that they are so proud of what we are doing and that they love the fact that that we've created this platform. And that just touched my heart because,
Gosh.
I mean, it's like if somebody who not a friend, not a colleague or something. It's just
Who
somebody
has
who
to say that, right?
that's right. Somebody who has to say nice things to us. This was somebody, and that just really touched my heart. So I felt like I needed
Oh,
to share that with you. So
thank you, Linda. This has been a fun journey. Hannah, we just hit our year anniversary, Linda and I.
I know, I saw
yeah,
that. I'm a
yeah.
silent follower as well.
I love it. I love it. No, this is great. Well, we're excited. We're going to talk to Hannah about the invisible glue, how to advocate for yourself when your impact is behind the scenes. And one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this is because throughout my career, that has been where my impact has primarily been felt, right? I'm a behind the scenes person. I like to be behind the scenes, thinking about how I can
Yeah.
drive the operations and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff, right? And I know, Cindy, that's been a big part of your career, except for now as you've stepped out into this entrepreneurial role where you have no choice but to be in the limelight. But
Yeah.
but I do think so. I'm excited because I do think that this is something that gets forgotten about oftentimes, and I love that Hannah's going to share her perspective with us. So, Cindy, why don't you introduce everybody to Hannah so they get to know her?
Yeah, I'm excited to do that. So, Hannah is a senior advanced analytics and AI product marketing manager at Alteryx Software with 10 years in B2B tech marketing. Over the past 3 years, she's driven multiple AI product launches. I've seen a lot on LinkedIn about Hannah and significant pipeline generation through creative demand generation campaigns. As a pragmatic certified product marketer, that is a mouthful,
That is a mouthful.
and top 50 mentor on ADP list, which I absolutely love. Can't wait to hear more about that. She's passionate about storytelling, audience engagement, and helping others navigate career growth and negotiation. When she's not launching products, you'll find her booking window seats to her latest travel destinations,
Love it.
experimenting with new recipes while her golden retriever Harper, who we love, waits for mishaps or enjoys Denver's sunny days hiking and biking. Her college experience of studying and living in Torino, Italy, taught her that the best insights, whether in marketing or life, come from stepping outside of your comfort zone. And Hannah, I have seen you do that since I met you years ago when we were talking to you about being an intern. So,
Yeah.
welcome to the Hurry
Welcome.
podcast.
Hannah,
Thank
I'm so curious.
you.
Why are you now? I'm a window seat person as well. I will do just about anything to make sure I get my window seat. Why are you a window seat person?
I actually get terrible motion sickness. And that's not just in cars or planes, like
Yeah.
on everything. I could be standing still and get
Oh
motion
my
sickness.
goodness. Wow.
And so being able to see at the ground,
The
see out
horizon.
around myself in some sort of way helps that.
Wow.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I'm a window person
I'm in the
because
aisle and it starts jiggling.
Yes. Well, and I'm a window person because I don't want to socialize, and it's easier to be not unsociable, or not. I guess that's the right word. When you're in the window, I like to get in, get all settled in, get my headphones on. Like I'm in my little bubble, and I don't want to talk to anybody. And I feel like in the middle in the aisle, you're pressured to be like you have to socialize when you're in those seats.
You
You
have
have
to
no
be
choice.
nice.
You have to be nice. Yeah. And I'm like,
I promise
I'm like,
we'll
oh, I
we'll
point to
get to
my
the point
earplugs.
soon. But I just had a recent flight back from Europe, and our aisle mate on that flight was the best aisle mate I've ever had in my life.
Oh, that's so
Oh,
He
nice.
every like 2 hours he looked at our whole row, which was me and my fiance, and
Oh,
he was like, "It's time to go potty. Everybody's getting up. Everyone's
that
going
is
to the
so
bathroom, the
cool.
whole row."
awesome. So
I
you're
And
love
not
that.
sitting
I was
there.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but he
What a great
was an
travel
extrovert,
trip.
to your point, Linda. He
Yes.
was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah. The introvert, I'm like, I don't want to, but what a great tip for aisle seat people, because
Mm.
that's also too, sometimes I will sit, one, I don't like to get up on the flight, but two, sometimes like I will let my bladder come close to exploding, right? Because I don't want to
That's why I
bother the
sit on the
person on
aisle
me.
seat.
Well, and I don't want to bother the aisle person who has now unpacked everything they own. They have everything down, and you're like, now you got to get up and go to the restroom. And I'm like, hey, there's responsibility with the aisle seats. You
There is.
gotta be a good aisle mate. I love that.
That's
That's
right.
such a great story. So
And Hannah, was there anything special that happened on that trip?
Yeah, I actually just got engaged, Linda, in Ireland.
Congratulations!
Yeah, so that's really
Oh, how
exciting news.
Had to find an in for that. Congratulations,
yeah,
Hannah. We're so
I
happy
love
for
that.
Thank
you.
you.
That's
No, for
amazing.
sure.
Well, let's
Yeah,
get into some of
yeah.
this
Let's
stuff
jump
because
in.
I'm just super interested. What does the term invisible glue mean to you, Hannah?
Yeah, I think this is a very abstractly written title for our podcast today. But to me, invisible glue is really, you talked about it a little bit, Linda, at the start of this, but the essential and invisible work that happens across an organization that really holds the company together and
Mhm.
usually comes without the flashy recognition.
Yeah.
And some people like that and some people don't. But
Very
that's what I
true.
really think as the invisible glue is that person's ensuring that different teams talk to each other, that different departments and areas don't have things fall through the cracks, and they're working on the silent part of projects.
We
Yeah,
used to
like that.
say, in payroll and HR, you only heard things when they were bad. You didn't hear about things when they were good. So silence was golden. That was
Yeah,
a good sign. Things are going
that's
well.
true.
Then I got
That's
into
true.
change management and started poking the bear, like, how are things going?
Right.
Even if they're not going well, I want to hear about them. But
That's
yeah,
right.
it's
No,
so true.
I like that. Well, and Hannah, you bring up a really good point in that if you are going to be in a role where you are more of that invisible glue, it's important to have a level of self awareness to know that
Yeah.
you're okay with that. Because exactly what you just said, if you're going to be the behind the scenes, kind of glue that holds the organization together, it doesn't often come with the flashy recognition, the lights on that big time recognition around those things. And for some people, they need that, they want that, and that's perfectly okay. But you should probably be self-aware, because sometimes what I've seen happen is that individuals who crave that then find themselves very unhappy in their position, right? And they almost become a little bitter, if you will, because they're not getting the recognition for all the amazing things that they're doing out there. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. And should we be thinking about those people who need the recognition and those who don't? Should we be treating them differently? What's your thoughts on that?
I think everyone, regardless of what they say, I think everyone needs recognition.
Indeed.
I think there are people that don't know how to ask for recognition. And I think I
Well,
see
and
that
it's
a lot.
different, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. It is. And I think I see that trend a lot more across roles that are a little bit indivisible or invisible, excuse me. But like most of us have found ourselves at some point in some sort of role that has at least some quality of an invisible glue function.
Yeah.
And so I hear the people who want recognition ask for it more, but I hear the folks in the invisible glue roles, and we can get into this. I know you guys are going to have some questions around this too, but I hear those people in the invisible glue roles not ask as much or not ask as
Yeah.
loudly.
Yep.
And that doesn't mean that they don't need it.
Good point.
And if
Good
you're a
point.
good leader, you're going to recognize that each person needs recognition in a different way. And I think,
Mhm.
again, Linda, going back to, our HR community, I think that's where maybe leaders have a conversation with HR and say, hey, I've got someone in one of these invisible glue roles. They do so much for the organization. They're not super comfortable being called out. What are some
Right?
ideas that we can brainstorm on how
Yeah.
to ensure they feel appreciated and recognized?
Absolutely. Yep. No,
Yeah.
I like that. And I think you bring up some really good points there, Hannah, is that everybody does want to be recognized for the work they do.
Yeah.
How they're recognized is important. Like, I don't need a ticker tape parade. A simple thank you is good enough for me, right? I'm okay with that level of acknowledgement. But I know other people who they really do. They want it to, they want a little bit more, and that's okay too. Like that's important. To your point, Cindy, is really understanding, and that's a role of a good leader, right? To understand that each of your
Right.
individual contributors need something maybe slightly different, and how are you addressing it? So you're not treating everybody the same way across the board. So, no, I like that for sure.
I
I
actually
think
had
that's
that
good.
conversations with my managers in the past too, of just
Good
speaking
for
up for
you.
Good.
myself, asking
Yeah,
for the recognition type that does work for me.
that's
Because
Yeah.
such
yeah,
a
I think it's
great
important
point.
to understand that we are all different. I can't expect
Yeah.
my manager to know what
Love
recognition
that.
I need. Yeah.
That's a really good point. It's advocating for yourself. I think sometimes when you start to see morale issues, that oftentimes what you find is that they're not using their voice. And in some organizations, maybe you can't, but I would say most organizations, if you were to approach your manager, have those conversations, most good managers, good leaders are going to be open to hearing that. And I think you're right. It's important because you can't read minds. You don't know how everybody is feeling or reacting. So I think that's great. Self advocacy is such an important point in all of that. So, yeah.
I think, Hannah, as long as I've known you, I think you have always done such a great job of that. And you do so in a very professional way. I mean, I know that you have advocated for yourself in the past with previous managers, but in a way that is like respectful, but also honors the work that you're doing and putting into something because you
I have
amazing work.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I have some tips and tricks to share that I've learned along the way here today.
We
So
would love
We
to
want to,
hear those.
yeah, it's like we want to
Yeah.
hear those because I'd love to hear about like
Yeah.
what are some of those moments when maybe you did feel overlooked or undervalued, and how did you navigate through that, and share some of those tips and tricks for our listeners who might be feeling that same way.
yeah, so I have not ever felt overlooked or undervalued by like a direct manager. I have been
Great.
very lucky over my career. I will
Yeah.
say I have felt overlooked and undervalued by at times the organizations that I've been part of.
Okay.
And just as a function of my role, so I actually started out my career in a much more external facing, less individual. In I made the title of this and I can't even say it right. Invisible glue
Okay.
roles. But yeah, a good example, I worked in construction for a little bit. I worked in the construction industry and I was doing very external facing marketing at that time still. And I think construction as a whole, I'm generalizing, but that's an industry where it's a handshake industry, right? You know someone who knows someone, you call someone's dad that knows someone else's dad
Yeah.
at the company. And they've operated that way for many, many, many years and it works well.
Yeah.
And so I think I had to really prove my value at that organization heavier than I've ever had to in my career. And I won't say that I felt undervalued, but I felt like I had to prove my value and really what I could do with marketing for them that was not maybe what they thought they needed or wanted. And I really had to showcase some of the invisible work, some of the non-invisible work that I was doing and the results that achieved to get them to see that value in having me on their team.
And a really key point too, I think, when you are highlighting the value that you're bringing, results matter. Results speak volumes, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
I think something else too, I tell my mentors, my mentees this all the time. As you said, Cindy, I mentor over on ADP List, which is a platform. I tell them all the time, like, you can't just assume that people know what you're doing. You can't assume that people know what you're doing. You can't assume that they care what you're doing. And you can't assume that they know the value of what you're doing. So
very true. You got to toot your own horn. And I think that there's ways to toot your own horn without coming across as being, arrogant or showy. But to your point, everybody is busy. We were just talking about this earlier today at our company. It doesn't matter what your position in the organization is. Everyone here works. Like there's nobody who is just a position of stature who gets to delegate everything down and they're just kind of sitting up here type of thing. I think those roles are non-existent in today's work world anyway, but everybody works. And so because of that, sometimes you get so consumed with what you're doing, you have no idea what the people around you are actually working on, what they're struggling with, what they're focusing on. And so it is really important sometimes to say, hey, by the way, did you know that? I know for me, when I was younger, I did not know that. And I just assumed as long as I continued doing a great job and I was delivering and like Cindy said, showing results, that I would be recognized and I would be properly compensated and promoted. And that didn't happen, right? Because nobody was paying attention because I wasn't saying anything. I wasn't advocating for myself to say, hey, by the way, I just want to walk you through some of the things that I've been doing. So,
and I do see that same point really socialized into women, especially.
For sure, yeah.
So I hear what you're saying, totally valid, and I see it all the time. I've seen it in myself. So
absolutely, yeah. No, it's true. Yeah, it is. It's a different dynamic. Part of why we have this platform is to try to change that so that we can give that voice to women. And I love that you're here representing and talking about these things, so we can all learn something from you.
So Hannah, tell us some more of those tips and tricks and things that you share with your mentees to really speak up for themselves and advocate without feeling like they're bragging.
Yes, and I was hoping that you would use that word, bragging. I was counting on you, and you delivered.
Woohoo!
I think bragging is such a ick word for me, and I'll tell you why. Because I think there are many ways to brag, humble brag, self-advocate, self-market that aren't the egotistical, narcissistic, I'm so great, here's all these things I've done.
Yeah.
And so I like to, especially with my mentees, again, back to them, I like to frame it as sharing context. So again, no one knows like what value you're bringing if you're not sharing context. If you're not giving your manager that context into like what you have done and what you've accomplished. Back to the point we made a couple minutes ago of sharing KPIs and metrics.
Yeah.
I listened to a podcast a couple of years ago now, but Peggy Klaus was on it. She's an author, and she also has an ick about bragging. So if I can find that podcast, I will pass it along. But she made a point about the same thing I am, and she said she takes bragging and spins it on its head and turns it into a good thing, and she creates these little brag bags of achievement folders. And that's something I've done personally in my career, but I also encourage others to do all the time. Is anytime you receive any sort of great feedback from coworkers or your manager, or especially in text, so on Teams or Slack or via email, I screenshot those. I put those directly into a folder that is my achievements brag bag folder for myself. I highly recommend anyone do that. If not, just for the sake of your own, I need some reassurance today. I'm going to go look at my brag bag. But also, I think this comes in handy when you go into performance eval conversations and reviews with your manager, and back to being that invisible glue. Sometimes it can feel really hard to quantify what you've done.
Yeah.
And those brag bags really help with that.
I love that brag bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She also talks about brag bites, which I also try to do, which is her concept of, I'm totally butchering this, by the way. This is what I've done over the last 2 years with that concept in mind.
Yeah.
But turning these like little moments into brag bites. So not necessarily using this huge, waiting for the perfect time, but sharing like a little bit here and there of, hey, manager, I also just wanted to follow up that I have done this thing and achieved this result that we have talked about in the last 2 weeks or something.
Yeah.
So I try to do that often. I try to encourage my mentees to use those skills as well. I think that really helps, especially in roles where it can feel at times, again, hard to quantify, and that you're doing a lot of important work, invaluable work, but you don't know how to receive the recognition.
Yeah.
I think sometimes that behind the scenes work too to other people seems like the easy stuff, right? When there is an event, I'll just use that as an example. A lot of times I'll say, if the event goes off without a hitch, people think it was easy. But if something doesn't go quite 100%, people are like, oh my gosh, that wasn't planned well. Or did you notice that one thing? And they hyper focus on that one thing. So I think, again, it takes a lot of skills to be the invisible glue, and a lot of organization, preparation. I think that another
100%.
thing too that is helpful that I encourage people to do too is when you get call outs, even if it's an email to say how great things were, share that. Maybe that goes in your brag bag, right,
Yes.
Hannah?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I take those things. So when one of my employees sends something to me, I then send it to my boss as well. So I'm like, hey, I
Awesome.
just want to let you know, look at this amazing thing. Like just this week, actually, one of the people on my team got this great shout out from a customer. And I'm like, these are the things we're trying to encourage, creating raving fans from our customer base. Well, that little action that he was doing warranted this great email, and I wanted my boss to see it as well, because it's important, to make sure you push that up as well, because it's hard for me sometimes to always remember to articulate the incredible things that my team is doing. So when those little things come across, I'm like, oh, perfect opportunity. I'm going to forward that over to my leader so that he can see what the team is doing as well, and the feedback that they're getting. So.
I think you're exactly on. One of the other tips I share with folks is that you've got to, while self-advocating, it is so important to also advocate for the people that helped make it happen other than
Awesome.
you. So whenever I'm trying to advocate for myself, I'm making sure that I'm doing so in a factual way, I'm doing so in a supported way, but I'm also sharing the plethora of folks that helped me get what they did. And so hopefully, in hopes, like you just shared, Linda, that's going to their managers, and their managers are raising them up.
Absolutely.
So, I think that helps make it feel a little less braggy also.
Yeah.
Well,
I like that. Yeah. Go ahead, Cindy.
It also, I was just going to say, it provides maybe an opportunity for, say, a stretch project or something too,
Right.
because I might think back, oh, I remember Hannah mentioned Linda did this thing. Maybe she'd be interested in this project or, or
Uh-huh.
whatever it happens to be. So
No, I like that.
I
Plus,
noticed
I
that on
think
your
that breeds a
LinkedIn.
positive
Yeah,
culture too,
it
right? I
does.
mean,
I
I
agree.
think about, Cindy, the work that you do around change. And it's like, it's so important in organizations that we do remember because you're absolutely right, Hannah. Even if you did something really amazing, chances are pretty good somebody helped you. And even now, there are those times when you literally just by yourself achieve something
Right.
incredible and you shouldn't take anything away from that and you should give yourself that brag moment as well. But I think that it is important to remember. And it's just like to say, it's a team effort. It took a team effort. It doesn't diminish anything. And honestly, what I find is that when you recognize the whole group, even if you were the leader, you were the one who really pulled it over the finish line, when you recognize the whole team, people know that you were the catalyst to
Yeah.
all of that. And they recognize that in you as well, because that's true leadership when you take that time to recognize the team, not just, be have to talk about yourself type of thing. So
Oh, and Hannah, you do a great job of that on LinkedIn. I know every time you post,
Thank
like,
you.
celebrate this has rolled out, or, you're uh, adding, you're
Yeah,
tagging
tagging the
people.
folks on my team. Yeah,
Yeah,
because they do, and a lot of them, just in the nature of the roles that we're in, are doing invisible work as well.
I love
And
it.
absolutely.
a lot of them are not self-advocating. So,
No.
I love
Well,
that
Hannah,
you're
what
helping
made you
them.
decide to become a mentor? Because, that's an interesting and challenging thing to do sometimes, is to become a mentor. What drove you in that direction? And was there someone who mentored you that inspired you to maybe go that route?
yeah, I started mentoring about a year and a half ago, officially, but I would say I have been informally mentoring here and there over the years. And I have myself had many of informal mentors over the years as well. I don't know that I can ever say that I've had a mentor,
Sure.
but I've had many informal mentors and people that I ask questions to, including Cindy, people that I reach out to if I have a challenge or something that I'm working through, and people that I just watch from the sidelines as they execute and try to emulate what I'm liking seeing from them with
I
myself.
like
So
that.
I think that kind of drove the decision to go towards mentorship. I think also I had a lot of imposter syndrome for the first half of my career, and I think I had this thought in my head that I didn't know enough, I hadn't been in the industry long enough to give advice.
Yeah.
But I was having quite a bit of informal conversations with people on LinkedIn or just through my network of, hey, I have this person. Can I send them to you to ask you about your internship that you had or about
Yeah.
this marketing project that you've done and just get some feedback. And
I
so
love
then I was
that.
like, can I do this? Um, should I be doing
Am I
like
qualified
formal?
Yeah.
to answer
Right.
this question?
And so I just started playing around. I found the ADP list mentor platform through someone else in my network that was doing that. And I put myself out there. I think product marketing, which is the industry and role that I'm in, it's growing really rapidly and
Mm.
it's very vague right now. It looks different at every organization. The role is not standardized. And so I was like, maybe I can just help with some of that because I think 4 years ago, I also was like, what even is that? Do I want to do that? Can I do that?
Right.
I think that's what led me to wanting to mentor.
I like that. I could see that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that product marketing kind of suits the role of mentorship as well, because that is a role of product marketing, right? Is that you're listening to what people need and want and their feedback, and then you're taking that information and feeding that into engineering, into sales, into
Exactly.
industry marketing, right? So it almost is like you didn't even realize you were just a natural for the role. So
Yeah. And
That
it's
I
doesn't
been
love that.
surprise
so,
me.
so rewarding. Like, it's
Oh,
been
good.
more rewarding than I ever could have possibly imagined it being.
I love
Uh,
that.
yeah.
And one thing I do want to recognize Hannah about, speaking of recognition, about a year or so ago, Hannah and I met for coffee, and we're sitting there and she goes, Cindy, I just want to tell you, your website sucks. And and Hannah is one of the few people that could have gotten away with that. And I was like, is there any ideas you have or anything? Through conversations with Hannah, which she gave her time to me so graciously, and her recommendations were instrumental in redeveloping the website and
So
reconsidering
happy
just
to hear that.
even like how I talk about the business and things like that. So, um, I just it goes a long way, Hannah, that you're such a great that was a mentoring opportunity for me, and so thank you for that.
At the Delta Principle, we are transforming the way you experience change. Have you ever experienced an organizational change where your employees pushed back because it was too much, too fast, or they just didn't understand why they couldn't do things the way they've always done them? What about where communication was non-existent or unorganized, with important updates getting lost in the shuffle, leaving people confused? And have you ever experienced change where morale was at an all-time low because the change felt overwhelming and not aligned with your organization's culture? If you are being asked to lead an important organizational change, especially if you're new to leading change, or if you're just feeling overwhelmed, the Delta Principle is here to support you. We work closely with you as a trusted partner, co-creating real-world solutions to address your unique challenges, and we equip you and your organization for future success. Are you gearing up for your next transformation journey or exploring ways to strengthen your change management skills? Then let's connect. This year, we're thrilled to introduce Leading Change, a training designed for leaders driving organizational initiatives, and Navigating Change, a training tailored to empower teams and adapting to change with confidence. Our coaching and training sessions are fully customizable to meet your organization's unique needs. Reach out today to see how we can partner with you to make your next change a success. You can find us on LinkedIn or by emailing us at info@thedeltaprinciple.com.
And it
Thanks
Hannah,
for
what
letting
gave
me
you the
have that.
confidence to?
Yeah.
Well, and I'm curious, Hannah, what gave you the confidence? I mean, obviously, you and Cindy have a good relationship, and so there's that aspect of it. But this is business, right? This is Cindy's baby. This is her business. The Delta
Yep.
Principle. She's worked a long time. What gave you the confidence to say to her, Cindy, your website sucks, but let me give you some feedback.
I think it was the feedback portion that gave me the
Okay.
confidence.
it wasn't just
I
mic
had
drop.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I had sat on it for a little while, because, Cindy, you were in the early stages of promotion. I think this was about a year in, so you're about a
Yeah.
year deep. You had done some things that were really great. I had been kind of watching along, following along. And so I had sat on it for a little while because I was like, is that actually constructive and helpful feedback? Like, do I have something that is not just mic drop? I don't like your website.
Right. Yeah.
And so I did. I spent some time thinking about it, compiling my thoughts about it. And then that's what followed that conversation was like, I am so happy to provide feedback to you. I have some
I
thoughts. I
love
have some
the feedback.
suggestions. I want to just write it down on paper and brainstorm with you. And you don't have to take them. It won't hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
And I hope I didn't hurt
You
your
said
feelings, but I
that.
want you to succeed.
No, it didn't whatsoever.
I
And
like
so
that.
part of the reason I share the story is be brave, share
Yeah.
with people. And you
Mhm.
did do your homework, but it wasn't just like a statement. It was a statement. And I have some ideas if you're interested, but completely understand if you're not. And
Right.
it was a process that we went through to really redefine some things and highlight some things. So I
I
think
like that.
that is what a good mentor does,
Yeah.
particularly for the behind the scenes kinds of things that you
Yeah.
might not think people are paying attention to. So kind of goes back to the invisible glue. Your website's a big deal, but it's sort of a behind the scenes thing, right? So
That's right.
A
just
lot of it.
That's
very,
right.
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
much
No,
appreciate that. Yeah.
that's very true. Hannah, what do you think are some of the unique challenges for women in the behind the scenes roles? Because even though Cindy and I talk about this a lot, that women have come a long way. So we don't want to take away from the success that women have had, and the women who came before us who have kind of laid the trail for us. But we still have a long way to go, and there is still a lot of gender disparity in how we're viewed, how we approach things. So, talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what you see are some of the challenges in those behind the scene roles.
Yeah, and I think you already highlighted some of them, and I have experienced them too. Like I said, so I've worked in construction and I've worked in tech and pretty high tech areas. So we're talking like data management and analytics and AI, and there are many of capable and talented and super women that I work with,
Yeah.
and there are many more men still.
Yeah.
Um, so I get a front row seat to this. I've had a front row seat to some of these workplace dynamics for my entire career path. I think we're seeing progress, like you shared, but it's still pretty imbalanced. And
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, like I said earlier, I think it's a little bit socially ingrained into women,
Mhm.
Mhm.
especially
That's fair.
especially certain generations.
Yep.
But bragging or boasting versus
Mhm.
calling ourselves self-advocating or marketing
Yeah.
ourselves, self-marketing,
Yeah.
Providing
sharing
context.
sharing context.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that lends to this like advocacy gap that I've seen. So my male colleagues just are typically louder and more forthcoming about their achievements and their want to advance. And even if we're doing the exact same role, so even if they are also in a very invisible glue style role, they are
Mhm.
just being louder. They're just sharing more about their desires and their wants and their achievements. And I think, unfortunately, then that just creates a cycle of that. Um, and so, yeah, I try to balance it, um, but I think it is hard as a woman. And I think you have to straddle this line of warm but assertive. I'm going to share that. I also heard that in a podcast that I don't know where it came from, but it stuck with me because it's
Yeah.
true. I think you have to balance this like warm but assertive more than your male colleagues
Mhm.
when you're trying to self-advocate, when you're trying to like break through in the industry that you're in. And that's
Interesting.
really connecting people and doing the invisible glue work, but it's also the self-advocating side and the sharing context side and like speaking up and being brave.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah. No, I like
So,
that.
Hannah, it sounds like a lot of what you're doing as a mentor and how you're self-advocating and how you recommend to your mentees and how you're recommending to our community to self-advocate is a lot of conversations, networking, sharing of ideas, things like that. Maybe talk to your HR person, maybe talk to a different leader in a different part of the organization that you're
Yes,
comfortable with.
exactly. Yep.
Any other kinds of recommendations around that?
Well, maybe I can rephrase Cindy's question just a little bit in that what role do you think that the organization needs to play in that? Because
Good
one of the
question.
things that you said that I thought was really interesting is you made the statement that you've not really felt undervalued or overlooked by your manager, but by the
Maybe the
organization. So
organization.
yeah. So what advice would you give maybe organizationally? Because that speaks to our community of HR and leaders, who are out there listening on what could we be doing better so we
Yeah.
can help that the invisible glue to maybe not feel quite as invisible and recognize the work that they're doing. What advice would you maybe give to organizations?
Yeah, thanks for rephrasing the ask
Yeah.
there, as I like to say. Um, one of them for sure is management training. I think a lot of the reason that I haven't personally encountered that problem with the direct managers is that they have actually, over their careers, at some point in an organization, received very proactive management training about how to work with different people and
Awesome.
That's
how to
great.
spotlight some invisible work. I currently have a manager who is amazing at this. She provides so much opportunity for visibility for us within our organization up the chain. And
Love
she does
that.
it on a weekly basis. She does it consistently. She
Great.
goes out of her way to ask those things of us to make sure that she can highlight them. And so I think that's one that's huge, is teaching leaders and managers to look beyond the metrics and seek out like the value that's not only measured in visibility or metrics, but sometimes the quiet value that is powering the organization.
Yeah.
I think secondly, organization training for folks as a whole. I think sometimes like this is seen as people go or don't go. It's sort of like the HR
Right.
led. We've got someone
Mhm.
coming in talking
Soft
about self
skills.
advocacy, soft
Yeah.
Yeah.
skills.
Yeah.
I personally love those. I attend every one. I think the learning coming out of those, generally speaking, has helped me over my career.
Yeah.
I think it's always helpful to hear someone else who has done it. And then
Yeah.
you can just
Agree. Yeah.
emulate it. You can take that. You can
Yes.
take what you like, leave what you don't, and run with that. I think
Yeah.
that as an organization, at least providing that opportunity to your
Yeah.
employees
I like that.
is invaluable. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a great shout out for our HR and even our leaders out there is you're absolutely right. One of the things, and Cindy and I have talked about this a lot, is that oftentimes managers are not getting trained on how to be managers. A lot of times people
Right.
that are promoted into management roles are because they were really good at what their job. And so we're like, oh,
Individual.
let's promote them. Yeah, let's put them
Right.
into a leader role. And I know Cindy and I have lamented in the past with working with our engineering colleagues back in the day that a really great engineer is not a really great manager because oftentimes
Right.
that's just not their skill set, right? People are not necessarily their skills. So I love what you said there, in that HR and leadership, make sure for HR people, make sure you're offering that up, and maybe that's a great opportunity too. That if it's part of a promotion plan or something like that, there is leadership training that is a part of that path forward to becoming a manager, right? That you're required to take this type of training. And then for leaders that are already in the roles, maybe they've been doing it for a while, it's always good to go and brush up your skills. Go take some of those classes, go do a LinkedIn learning, read a book, listen to a podcast. There's
Yeah.
so many resources out there, right? But it's so important because you're leading that next generation of leaders behind you too, right? Whether they remain as
Right.
individual contributors or managers, it's your responsibility to really kind of lead that. So that's really great advice, and I like that.
And everybody can use those skills, not just managers,
Gosh,
but
yeah, you're
especially
absolutely right.
managers.
100%. That's what I was going to say is even if you're not a manager, I have taken some of those courses
Yeah.
myself. I'm an individual contributor,
Yeah,
and very happy to be so. But I think it's really helped me manage up when I've needed
yes,
There you go.
yeah,
to take
That's
care of
that's
some
key.
of these
true.
things. Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I like that. How do you think like being a woman shapes some of your experiences of being an invisible glue in the workplace? Because I do think that as women, we bring some special skills to the workforce that our male counterparts don't bring. So, how do you think that maybe helps us in that invisible glue as well?
Yeah, I tell my mentors, I keep calling them my mentors, but I feel like they're
Probably
my
goes
mentors
both
too.
ways a little.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes both ways for
Yeah.
sure.
My
Yeah.
mentees, I tell them this all the time. Um, I feel, especially as a woman and especially in product marketing, one of my greatest skill sets comes from being a woman. Like, I'm a good listener and I like to make people connections and I like
I
to
love
ask
that.
about people's days and I like to work cross functionally with, and you could say this about the the other side of the gender, right? Like there are plenty of
Good.
males who can do this and do it well. I think as women though, like generally speaking, there's a certain sense of warmth and a certain sense of community that we create
Mhm.
and bring. And that helps me every single day in my job and specifically in invisible glue roles where you have to be cross functional and so collaborative and work with so many
Relationships.
personalities and
Mhm.
build relationships. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. No, I think,
Oh,
well, and that's what I was hoping that's what you were going to say because that's exactly how I feel. Is that I think women inherently have skills that lend to that really kind of bringing all those things that you were talking about. Is that it's a more empathetic leadership in most cases. And we are about community and, like even back in the olden days when they would say, it takes a village to raise children, it was true. And I think women leaned on one another, to kind of help them through those. So what I would encourage for all of our listeners out there is to make sure you're building those communities, because that also helps in that those feelings of that invisible glue. Because if you're talking to other women or even men who may be going through something similar, you can build a community around that. And sometimes that helps, because then it's not for you all to get together and bitch about it, right? It's so that you have the opportunity to get together and learn from each other, take those tips and tricks that you're sharing, your mentor-mentee relationship. Like really, that's where the power of the community and the relationship comes into play, is having that chance to learn from each other and help each other out. So
I'll be vulnerable here too and say that I recently was in the midst of a very, very stressful quarter. And I think it's also it's hard in a male dominated industry to not sometimes lean into that behavior too.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah,
coming out of my sort of feminine state and leaning into like this very aggressive state without that warm that I was talking about
yeah,
earlier.
yeah.
And so I recently had feedback from myself, from someone else's manager on a different team, that I had been a little harsh in my feedback to them. I had damaged the relationship a little bit. And that was so impactful to me. Actually, I cried to
Wow.
my manager after I got that feedback, because I was like, it is so important to me to build
Yes.
relationships at work and to keep them and to make people feel appreciated and to help others self advocate and to recognize invisible work. And to hear that I had a moment of doing the complete opposite of that was horrifying to
Yeah,
me. But
sure.
yeah, it's a good reminder to like check yourself,
Yeah, yeah.
move into
No,
the
Thank you
next
for
phase.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you for that vulnerability. Can you share with us kind
absolutely.
of what you did then as a result to the person who felt that way?
I actually don't know who it was, and the
Oh,
manager didn't
Okay.
want to share it with me,
okay.
which is totally
That's
fine.
valid.
But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like as a person in my job, the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I was just hyper aware of how I was communicating to people, and I think
Mhm.
it was a
For
good
you,
reminder to
Hannah.
me to do that all the time. We should do that. You
Yeah,
never know what someone's going through. You
that's
never
true.
know
Yeah.
how you're being perceived. I think
That's
especially in this digital age, like it's more important
Mhm.
now more
true.
than ever to just make sure that you're doing things in a kind way. You're assuming best intent out of people.
I
I
love
like that.
that. I saw an email yesterday and I had to reread it 3 or 4 times. With that in mind, Hannah, that has been a learning for me. Read with the
Yeah.
read as if the person had the best of intentions, and
Mhm.
then give that person the opportunity. So I called the person to just say, "I just want you to know kinda how this landed, but I don't know what your intention was. Can you just kinda
Right.
share that more with me?" And we had a great conversation as a result, which I so appreciated because it
Mhm.
preserved the relationship. And
Exactly.
Hannah, thank you again for being vulnerable with us on that.
Yeah.
We're all also human, and
We're
That's
all
right.
learning.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah,
So,
and we all have those days, and we have those moments, and
yeah,
it's what you do with that feedback
that's
that's so
right.
important. And the fact that you heard what was said, you kind of reflected on it, and you're like, okay, this is something that's really important to me, and so
Right.
I'm going to, change up how I do things. But recognize it was a moment for you. That's not who Hannah is. That
It
was a
isn't.
moment that that happened, and you were able to recover and move forward. So
And
good
what you
for
did
you.
with
For
that
sure. And
information,
I
that's
just
who you
and
are.
I just share it because I that person is also in a very invisible role, and I think the feedback that I shared was not the feedback that she needed. She needed recognition, or they needed.
Yeah,
I'm assuming it's a she because I work with mostly women on marketing teams.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but they needed recognition and they needed support and they needed to be recognized for the invisible work that they had done, and I didn't do that. So,
Thanks
No,
for
I
that
like that.
reminder.
yeah.
Yeah, that is. That's a good reminder to everybody to just remember to say thank you, if nothing else. Like
Yep.
you don't have to, and sometimes that's literally all someone needs is just, hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. The other thing I've started to say is I appreciate you, because it's like instead of
Yeah.
it being, I appreciate what you did for me, which I do, But I appreciate you, the person, because you chose to do this and help me out. And so I just want you
Yeah,
to know how much I appreciate you and what you do. And so I think
I love
sometimes
that.
it's just,
I do too.
like we said, right, Cindy, words matter. So, and how you use those. So,
I
no,
do.
I love that. It's really good. So, Hannah, what's one piece of advice for women who are trying to get their work seen and valued? What would you get? What advice would you give, or what advice do you give to your mentees?
Yeah, make your work visible. I hope you've all heard this 75,000 times from me today. Make your work
Yes.
visible strategically and consistently. So again, like don't assume that people know what you're doing or how much impact it has. Share that, share the context. Visibility and sharing context isn't bragging, it's self-advocacy, it's self-marketing, especially if you can do it in a way that's productive and factual.
I love it.
That.
Thanks,
No.
Hannah.
Well, Hannah, I can see why Cindy spoke so highly of you. I'm so honored to have gotten the chance to spend some time with you. I know our listeners are going to feel
A
the
lot.
same way.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like what you brought to the table and just the advice that you've shared is advice we can all learn from, regardless of what stage of career you're in. And so, thank you so much for everything. And now I'm going to make sure I connect with you on LinkedIn as well so I can see all those
Yeah,
amazing
please do,
posts
yeah.
from you. Absolutely. No. Well,
Yeah, it's
thanks
been so great
everyone.
to be here.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you,
we're glad you were
Hannah.
here. Yeah,
Yes.
thank
Thanks for
you,
spending
Cindy,
the
for
time.
bringing Hannah to us too.
So
So,
happy that we
absolutely.
got
Yeah,
to
me too.
visit. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
thanks to all of our listeners. We appreciate you out there. If you liked this episode, let us know. Make sure to go out there and like and follow and subscribe. You can find our podcasts on all the major streaming services. You can always connect with Cindy and myself, and now Hannah as well out on LinkedIn. So follow, like, subscribe, and we hope you all have an amazing rest of your day. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the HR Her Resources podcast. We're so happy to have you with us on this journey. Music and production by Logan Misigatis of LJM Productions. We'd also like to thank our intern, Lauren Banas, for creating our logo and supporting our social media postings. If you'd like to connect with Logan or Lauren, you can find their information in the show notes. If you found value in our discussion and think someone else might as well, please follow, subscribe to our LinkedIn, and share with a friend. Until our next episode, please take care and continue to support one another.